Today, we're going to talk about profit and we're going to talk about growth. And as always, we're going to speak about the stuff that's in the middle, because it's the detail that is behind both of those things that actually helps you be able to raise money from investors, pure and simple. And I've been saying this from the beginning of the year, that every single venture backable founder needs to get back to the origins of what you were building and who you were building it for, and you will raise money. Because whatever you're reading about raising money anywhere, I promise you, it is not tied into storytelling anymore. It's not tied into like talking about huge vision and big markets, unless you've made a lot of money for people previously. It is tied directly into what your customer is saying about you. And I heard this really, really nice phrase last week, actually, when I was speaking to one of our founders. Company's eBombo. We invested in eBombo a couple of years back. I loved eBombo because they were building this incredible software, which was the technology that was behind human resources working really well. And they had this incredible outreach system, maybe the best I've ever seen, where they were literally loading down 40 to 50 appointments a week just with the founder, not with anybody else, based on email outreach. Hugely impressive, because most folks are really struggling with email outreach today. While they were doing that and they were building it, they got their revenue up to 20 grand a month and 30 grand a month and 40 grand a month. And we built this very clever little Trojan horse in at the beginning. And so even though we knew that like the topic of implementing a new HR system into your company is a very, very complicated topic to have a conversation about. And actually it takes ages from the sales cycle. We also knew that there were elements of it that could be done really quickly. And the element that we looked at for the Trojan horse was, why don't we create epic production stroke events around your organization? And those epic production stroke events could be anything from El Cinco de Mayo, whereby anybody who's of Hispanic origin, specifically Mexican origin, those people really value that day. And rather than just wishing them a happy Cinco de Mayo, you actually build in games and things that they can do that engage them with other people around that culture. You can do that all the way through from the 4th of July to every other wonderful event, all the way down to Thanksgiving. And now you start imagining a Thanksgiving where somebody gets sent maybe a turkey, or maybe they get to win a turkey in a raffle that gets sent over to their houses. That's what they did. They built their revenue from 0 up to 100K a month in revenue, just using that Trojan horse. And then we layered on top of the Trojan horse, because people were saying, God, it would be cool if you could actually do events for our organization as well. And so then we layered on events on top of it. And then we got to last year, where eBombo came out with a very, very brave statement. They were at $300,000 a month. And they said, look, building a SaaS company for the sake of building a SaaS company, just because VCs like SaaS companies, is like trying to make a chicken dinner for vegetarians just because you're used to making chicken dinner. It just doesn't make sense. The business that is growing like crazy for them is the events business, the epic productions business. So why focus all this time on something that doesn't make revenue when you have this thing over here that's making a ton of revenue? And then he came out with a phrase, which I really liked, and I want to share it with everyone today, because it is really the beginning and the end, even on this conversation that we're going to go into with an incredible guest that I'm going to bring in, and we're going to talk about profit and revenue generation and scaling and growth and all those things. But here's what Matteo from eBombo said to me. To go from 0 to $1 million a year in revenue is almost impossible. So hard, right? You have nothing, you have no brand, nobody knows you, nobody's heard of you, you're cold calling, you're starting from nothing. To get to $1 million a year is almost impossible. To get from $1 million a year to $10 million a year is improbable, right? So you're at $1 million, which means you now have a semi-team. You now have a semi-marketing plan. You now have a semi-HR plan. You have a semi-outreach plan. You have a semi-take care of your clients plan. You are in a place where you are no longer on that very beginning stage where the only people you can attract and the only things you can attract are damaged, right? Now you have moved to a stage where actually you are becoming a real company, right? So it is improbable. But to go from $10 million a year to $100 million a year is extremely possible. And that's where this whole thing comes to. And what he said to me is, look, Brian, we're on like $3.5–4 million a year already. We're going to bump ourselves up to $10 million a year. Once we get to $10 million a year, we can acquire our way to $15–20 million a year. We can improve efficiencies. We can add on products. We can do all kinds of things because we are already a successful company. So I just want you to have this in your mind. Growth over everything. The product has to be great. The growth has to be well thought through. And if you do that, you will make a ton of money. And more importantly, in a market like this, where investors are actually having to be realistic about what great companies look like, you're going to get a ton of great companies through. So without further ado, I want to bring in the growth specialists so that we can have a proper conversation about this. Good to have you on the show.
Good to have you. Thanks for having me on the show, Brian. Good to be here.
And everybody who's listening to this is an entrepreneur. There's a bunch of investors as well, but they're entrepreneurs who are looking to grow their business. That's what they want to do.
Fantastic.
I had this really awesome conversation even this morning. I really want to talk about this whole thing of like 0 to a million, a million to 10 million, 10 million to 100 million, and kind of what that path looks like and what venture backable entrepreneurs should be thinking about to do it. But every time I'm in the venture world, I think to myself, like, I'm trying to use other words than lazy or lackadaisical or just passive, because what happens is money is a terrible evil, because the more money you're given, the weaker we become. Think about it. Anybody see Rocky? Like, you saw this, Rocky 1, he was badass. I was sitting in a restaurant on Saturday and the Eye of the Tiger came on. I'm like, man, that's when Rocky was Rocky great. But what happened in Rocky 3 and Rocky 4? He got soft. Yes. He got soft because there was so much money. There's a nice big mansion, silk sheets, a little bit of satin as he's getting into bed in the evening, dinner on nice china plates. It's different. It's not the Rocky there was at the start. And so I think sometimes venture backable startups have a terrible misfortune of going straight from Rocky 0 to Rocky 4 without having to go through Rocky 1, because they're given $10 million or $5 million at the beginning to go through. Yeah. And I was chatting to a lady this morning who's very much from the Tony Robbins world, a lady called Forbes Riley. And Forbes focuses on the power of communication. And she does the whole thing. She does the sales funnel. She does the webinars. She does the special offer that comes with the webinars, which converts a few people. She then does the deeper offer, where she brings them into her special product and then upsells them up to the mastermind. And then finally they can get to the one-on-one, which builds a business of like tens of millions of dollars a year. And I think founders don't often have to go through that route. So let's start with a little bit about you and a little bit about what you love most about growth, because it's your world, it's what you do, it's what you focus on every single moment of the day. And I want to share that with founders. And then I would love to dig into like any one of these topics, and then let's grow this like a tree.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Brian. So a little bit about me. I'm an international business coach. My focus is on the revenue system. And the revenue culture, which is, I think, a very critical piece in today's world. Like the way you mentioned, all that matters right now is how much revenues you're clocking, how can you become profitable, and how can you scale that entire thing to the next level. So I'm coaching 4 businesses. Prior to this, I was building a SaaS practice for a supply chain transformation company, and also doing my business excellence with UC Berkeley as a 1-year course, as a hybrid program. And prior to that, I was head of strategy for a location intelligence company. It is called Geospoc. We were essentially working on location intelligence using satellite imagery, demographic data, and combined that with the business data. And prior to that, I was with my friend. We had an AI consulting company. That's where I learned most of my corporate, I would say, lingo and the entire revenue system, because that was something which I grew grounds up and in a bootstrap manner. That being a services business, I had to kind of put in a lot of hard and sweat to kind of build it out, and I grew that by about 4x. So that's where I built the entire thing. And prior to this, I was handling digital transformation projects in the Navy, and also core engineering systems such as weapon systems engineering, control systems, electrical systems, and things like that. So
And
that's
what I
my
really
last part of 20
And what
years.
I really like here is you've used the same word. Every time you mention revenue, you always associate a word with it, which I really like, which is the word systems. And
Yes.
the thing about revenue is it's not random. Like you do have to try things, of course, but the objective is to always get to a system. And what I really liked about Forbes Riley and like her world is the world of Mark Cuban and Kevin Harrington and Tony Robbins and all those worlds where like systems are everything.
Yeah.
There is pure math answers
Yeah.
behind revenue systems. You
Absolutely.
just have to build the systems. So
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit about revenue systems and how they come together.
Right. I think there are, if you look at what forms or what kind of conforms to the revenue, it's five levers, right? So first is how do you generate leads, right? That's probably the first aspect of the system. Second is how do you convert them? That's the conversion percentage, which is the sales piece there. The third is how do you make sure that your pricing strategy is right so that the customer actually goes ahead and makes a purchase. So what is the kind of average ticket size a customer is expected to buy it out to, whatever you're offering to them. The fourth piece is how many times can the customer buy whatever you're offering, and how can you retain or how can you bring in a referral program so that the customer kind of is benefited through whatever you are offering, and it's kind of an upsell cross sell kind of a scenario, right? And the last part is how do you bring in pricing in such a manner that you actually can work around in the margin space as well. It should never be cost based pricing, it should be value based pricing is my belief. But there are certain industries where you are kind of stuck to cost based pricing, right? For example,
And also there's also panic based pricing,
absolutely.
which is most early stage founders, right? Most early stage founders, like they don't know what the pricing is because
Yeah,
they're making this up as they go along. Like somebody
yeah,
comes into an industry and they're saying we're going to disrupt it, we're going to change it, we're going to create something new.
yeah.
And here's the pricing. But we don't know if the founders, like I had one of our companies where I found out that one of the resellers reselling their particular product
Okay.
was reselling at 100% markup.
Oh
And so
wow.
you're like, wow, the customers will pay that. And not just one, but two and three and four and five and six and seven.
Yeah,
And so to your point on value-based pricing is not based on the value that you perceive, right,
correct.
as the seller. It's based on the value that is received by the consumer.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you get to value? Let's start there, if you don't mind. How do you get
Sure.
to value-based pricing? Like, where do you even begin? How do you move away from, especially your pre-seed seed, which means you desperately need the customer?
Yeah.
So, what does the journey look like from not risking losing it at the beginning
Mhm.
because you know that the more customers you get, the more venture money that you're going to get, which is going to solve the problem of maybe the marketing funnel in the first place, and then also make sure that you're not selling it too cheap or too expensive.
Yeah. So value-based pricing, I think, is an evolution. It's a combination of what you think is value versus what is perceived as value outside in the market, right? It's a combination of these two. The most important aspect here is to be able to kind of relate your value to what, uh, no, I wouldn't say to what, to why you even exist or why you even form the company, right? So it's important. I mean, just take, for example, Simon Sinek's circle, right? The golden circle. Why do you even get up in the morning and do what you want or what you're doing right now? That's going to be probably the purpose or the mission of the company. But then your product offering should be very closely related to that, which is why you're going to call out the value which you think is very close to what or very close to why you have even formed the company. For example, Patagonia, right? They said we're going to make only sustainable clothing, come what so may, right? And they boldly called that out in their all their marketing communication, right? And they said, we are so and so and so, we make only sustainable clothing, do not buy from us, right? I think probably one of the campaigns was, do not buy from us if you're not looking at sustainable clothing at all. And that clicked because people who understood the value behind and the why of why Patagonia was even formed quickly came on as loyal customers to Patagonia. They started off slow, but once they hit that momentum, they could take off from there. So that's the value which you perceive. So it has to be pretty good. It has to be pretty solid. It has to kind of address a certain job which you want the customer, which you want to solve for the customer. Now, once you decide on what is your value, you kind of go out and commence lead capturing. And every lead that you capture, you got to talk to them to understand, look, this is what I perceive as a value. This is what I think is your pain point. Tell me, is that so? Right? That's what typically happens in a discovery call. Discovery call is not to understand whether the customer is going to buy from you or not. Discovery call is essentially meant for you to match whatever value you're perceiving and whatever pain point you're perceiving. Does it match to the customer you want to sell? Right? So that is the core of discovery call. And when these two combine together is when I think your value-based pricing starts kicking in.
Yeah,
Until then,
I love that.
value-based pricing doesn't kick in.
And so what you're doing is you're combining two very important concepts. And really, entrepreneurs, I need to tell you, like, I've invested in over 300 companies. I see thousands and thousands and thousands of decks. Most people grasp the concept of the first part, that what you're doing. Most people do a very bad job on it, but they grasp it, right? We need to show our branding and we need to show our why, but hardly anyone does. Most people will just show their features because we're so deep in the weeds of, like, if somebody says, hey, Brian, what makes Expert Dojo so good? Well, we have the greatest training programs on the world. Like, who cares? Nobody woke up in the morning and thought, I want to train more, right? They woke up in the morning and said that they want to be able to be transformed by a company that has purpose that aligned with those. The purpose and the mission is what you're speaking to when you're talking about, that piece of the why. But the transformative impact, to your point, needs to be measured. Like, you have to show them, because they don't know themselves. They just know something doesn't work in the morning. Every single morning I have to get a bus and I have to wait 15 minutes for the bus. And then I get on the bus and then the bus takes me to work. Like, and if you're like, hey man, I can get you a car. And I'd be like, okay, that's cool. Thank you. How much is the car? It's like, no. It's not how much is the car. Can we just work out, like, this bus journey, what impact it has on you? Because it's not always 15 minutes before, and it's not always a 15-minute walk afterwards. It's not just that 35 minutes. Like, we can average that at 45 minutes. And now we got to talk about the lack of any kind of productivity on the bus. You can't make phone calls. You can't do anything. So you're literally losing each way an hour and a half every single day. How much money do you make every single year? Like, and you have to, that transformative impact has to be built in, and it has to be started very quantifiably so people can realize, okay, so your software costs $300 a month, but you're going to save me $10,000 to $15,000 a year on what I'm doing. And it's something that I'm going to enjoy doing. And it's not going to break my back or my bank trying to get this thing onboarded at the beginning. Cool. I get 3x return every single year just by using you. So I really, really like those two things. It's very seldom I hear those two things combined, but they're so important. Any founders out there that do not have their transformative impact in an incredibly clear way lined out for the user, look, Patagonia on the brand, I love as an example. If anybody wants to, like, understand the greatest branding of the world, look at Patagonia. Those guys have it nailed 5 ways from Sunday. And like you mentioned, one of the examples there's 50 other examples for how they believe in things. Like, even when there was the women's right to choose, and they immediately put an announcement up to say, we expect many of our people are going to be arrested today. As long as you're arrested for something which is non-violent, we'll pay your bail. It's like, whoa. And they may have even said their court case as well. I don't even know, but it was like clear, defined. Now employees are not working for you for a salary. They're working for you for a vocation, for a life that they want to have in the future with people that they want to be around. And so I think it's really, really, really cool on the Patagonia side. I want to throw in an example as well, and then maybe we layer on top of this conversation. I worked for a company years ago for a chap called Mark Dixon. And Mark Dixon started off Regis, and he was just at the beginning, and he was kicking it off, and he said, Brian, we need to enter into China and Asia and into Europe and everything else, and we need to open up over there. And I gladly accepted and went over there and opened up multiple Regis centers in those areas. And I always remember when people came in at the beginning and they're like, how much does this 100 square foot office cost? And I'd be like, this office is going to cost you $2,000 a month. And they were like, dude, That's crazy. That's like 10 times the price that I would pay for 100 square feet. And I'm like, oh,
Mm.
let me show you this cost model that we put in place. Because if you were going to get yourself a place which was for yourself, you'd need a receptionist. That would be 5K a month. You need to buy furniture that would be like broken down to a couple of $100 a month. You also need to get your telcos, and they were in the days that telcos were not cheap. You also need to get your internet, and they were in the days that internet was not reliable. And so we would break down this cost comparison to say, ha ha, if you come here, it's only $2,000 a month. But if you did it yourself, it actually is going to cost you $3,500 a month. And not only that, it is going to be a pain in your ass.
Yes.
And the thing is, if we didn't do that, nobody would have gone for serviced offices. They would have never equated in their mind how it's okay to pay $100 a foot when they can actually get something for $10 a foot. But when you actually turn it into a transformative impact perspective and you move away from the features into a place of, do I want to be sitting in a beautiful environment with incredible business people who are all successful? Now you move to the Apple model.
Yeah.
So I love you there. I'm gonna start searching for more questions. Any thoughts on top of that, or do you want to jump into some of the other areas?
I think probably I'll just roll back to the first question, right? So with respect to the revenue system, the revenue system is essentially working on those 5 levers which I mentioned, which is leads, conversion, amount of times a customer can purchase, the average ticket size, and the margins, right? So these are the 5 levers. Now, the moment you're able to define ownership for each of these levers very clearly within your organization, and all of them are set out to an objective, which is a goal, which you set out again for your organization, is when your revenue system continues to work, right? Unless this happens, there is just no way you're able to going to be build a system and scale. So it's important that you define the revenue system, you define the metrics, provide a North Star, tell people to start owning up each of these 5 levers, and look at how towards an objective, all of these 5 levers can start working together. You don't have to work all the 5 levers. Maybe the first year you're working only on the number of leads. And second year onwards, you're probably working on the conversions once the leads start settling in. Maybe the third or the fourth year is when you actually start working on, can you increase the average ticket size of the buyer? Can you look at how many times the buying is happening, repeat purchase, referrals? And finally, only in the 5th year, you can probably look at how you can probably look at increasing the margins and saying that, hey, look, I need to recover some of the money which I've already lost. Right. So that's probably the way to go about in a revenue system. That's where I'm going to stop.
Yeah. Okay. Good. And we're going to come back to those in a second. But there's a bunch of great questions in here.
No.
GTM. Look, GTM is what we love talking about. I have a great example of a GTM for Brex, and then afterwards, I want to give our GTM for breaking into India, like the expert dojo. Let's make it super real for everybody so that you know where it is. I want to throw in, I'll throw in maybe a GTM tactic that I really like, and then maybe you throw in one after that as well, maybe one that you've seen really successful. So I'm going to talk about building domain dominance by building personal brand. I think it is the biggest GTM. And the reason most people don't do it is because it's actually hard work, right? It is much easier to go out there and raise money and do all of that kind of BS with the knowledge that the high probability is you're going to fail. If you build your personal brand with the in servitude of building your domain dominance, so you go from domain awareness to domain authority to domain awareness to domain dominance, you're going to crush it. And so I'll give you an example of someone else and an example of us. And so let me start with somebody else, Brex, right? I love what these guys did. Their product was mediocre at best. And I am being so generous when I'm saying mediocre at best. They had literally zero product. They went into Y Combinator as a VR company, and halfway through they realized that wasn't really going to work. So then they were like, oh, you know what? Startups find it really hard to get credit, so we're going to solve that problem. No, there's no reason to solve that problem. Sure. There's a reason why banks don't give startup credit. They're bad credit risks. Dumbest idea ever, right? But from dumb ideas can spring awesome ideas. But they did 2 things. Number one, they built in a Trojan horse, what I spoke about with eBombo at the beginning. And their Trojan horse in their case was a copy and paste really of Bill.com. They built a very good expense management system that people would like using. So they kind of overlooked the fact that there was no product behind the banking product, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Second thing they did on their personal domain expert, building domain dominance, domain awareness to domain dominance, was they reached out to every single person who worked for PayPal and everybody else who was huge in the industry. And they did all kinds of crazy things. And if we had longer, I would tell you about how they actually went for a job. I believe it was Peter Thiel that they went for a job for, or it was one of the other PayPal Mafia guys. And they got all the way to the interview with that person. And then they were like, yeah, we're not really looking for a job, but I really want you as an advisor. So I hope you come on board. And they did that. And then when they raised the initial money, because everybody was hugely impressed by their board advisors, they then billboarded all of San Francisco. I mean, you couldn't go to San Francisco without seeing a billboard that was there for Brex. And so they really built up their domain dominance through a very, very aggressive strategy, which at the beginning cost them no money. And then as they raised money based on building their personal brand and all of the VCs knowing who they were, they started to do one bus shelter, one billboard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then the rest is history. They ended up building a really good product, which solved a problem that didn't even exist when they started. The problem they ended up solving was the fact that if you put too much money in one bank and that bank goes bust, you can lose your money. So what they did was they put all the money in Brex, spread it out amongst all of the banks. It meant that now you had a way to de-risk your banking environment. Okay, I want to tell you about India. We are opening up. Now, I've already invested a ton in India. We probably have like 30 plus investments over there of the 300 that we have. So I love India. I'm not stupid. I know India is going to be the future of the world. Like literally, if I had to close down the rest of the world and just have one place, I would have India. That's how strongly I believe in India. And I know for a fact, and no disrespect to anyone, but we just got to be watching what's happening in the world. We're not closing down, by the way. But if I had to, it would be India, right? Because I know what's happening. And there's like a gazillion reasons for it. The amount of engineers, the schools that they have there, the population, the strength in startup, blah, 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 blah. Low. So point in case, we're going hard in India. Now, our expert dojo could never be the biggest in the US. We could be 100 years and we would still have Y Combinator there because they built their brand first and they built a really strong brand. It doesn't mean that we can't be strong in the US. We have great companies going through and we can't be strong in Latin America. We can't be strong in Africa, but we can't be the strongest. And if we can't be the strongest, then it's okay, right? In India, we can be the strongest. But we can only be the strongest if we build out a great product and we build out a really good brand. But more importantly, the Indian entrepreneurs have to love us. If they don't love us, then what do we do? Just another VC deploying another bunch of money. So very first action that I did was to do a TEDx talk in India. Right? The place I did a TEDx talk was in a place called Kerala. And Kerala is like the birthplace of knowledge, et cetera, in India. So it's a very special and revered place over in India. And my TEDx talk was about how India, without any question, is going to be the center of the world for entrepreneurship within the next 10 or 15 years. But she has to be very careful that she doesn't do so with the loss of her soul. Because the entire culture and basis, not just of Hinduism, but just Indian culture in general, is all based on interconnectivity and guest is God and all those wonderful things. And like our culture is pretty much zero-sum game. Well, like here and it's here, right? So this talk is a very personal talk in an area which nobody is really discussing about how do you create the country that you want to have in the future without losing everything that was really important to the culture that you came from in the past. That in itself makes a statement to entrepreneurs. People will love it, people will hate it, I don't know, but the intention is to build a brand. The second thing that will happen is we will launch our book in India. We'll launch it over here. We'll launch it over in India at the beginning. And then we'll do a book tour on the back of the book in India. Number 3, we will personally intervene in one of our companies, which is an Indian-based company that we believe can be a unicorn. And we intervene in a way that we can come in and make the difference that will actually help that company to be able to become a unicorn.
Hmm.
That's building your personal brand with epic productions, which are specifically targeted to build domain dominance, and they
Hmm.
don't require any money at all. Like
Yeah.
launching a book requires no
Yeah.
money, TEDx talk doesn't require any money, and stepping into the company doesn't require any money at all. So, long answer, but I think this is the beginning of everything. Once you have your products and you have your brand, you have to
Mhm.
build a personal brand and servitude off that. What do you think?
I think that's fantastic, Brian. Unless somebody kind of, I think, let's say, recently I evaluated one of the companies which was run by a doctor. They are a really, really early stage startup. They have come up with a serum that is non-toxic for root canal treatment, but it can also treat acne, trauma scars, and accident scars. Okay, but the doctors, they were not able to kind of bring their domain dominance, like you said, forward. Neither were they thinking of looking at a brand. At which point I told them that, hey, look, I think you already have a brand which is in the offline space where you have more than a few clinics which is going around, and you have a way of working it out. It's just that you got to think, how will you put this across in such a way that it actually solves maybe a certain problem, or call out that certain problem, and then these two can combine, and actually you will be able to rocket your growth. All right. So I think what the point that they brought out, that unless somebody kind of builds the personal brand, I don't think there is domain dominance coming in any which way, or the growth coming in any which way, right? So they have to combine these two. I think that's a great point. From
Yeah.
my side, what I think is, if it is probably a B2C company, right? If it's B2C company, I think probably the first most important aspect is to be able to be boldly run experiments without failing, and put a system to run these experiments, right? When I say put a system, let's say you run an experiment, get it running for at least a month, or get it running for at least 15 days to know what kind of results are coming through, and be bold enough to kind of run these multitude of experiments, or form theses of at least 10 different experiments and run it through. Only then you'll be able to find out in a B2C company whether the customers are responding, and what kind of features are they responding to, what kind of value prop are they responding to, and what kind of value are they seeing actually in your product. Does it actually match or not? If it's a B2B, I think you need to start calling out the small innovations that you are actually doing in terms of being able to get the job done for the customer. For example, Gong.io, right? What they did was they built a revenue intelligence platform. And I think the core of their technology was they were able to kind of process these voice recordings at large scale and derive insights, which are extremely important to convert, right? And they kept calling it out in all their social media platforms, and they conducted webinars multitude of times, and they said, hey, this is what is going to define your conversion. We will give you the relevant revenue intelligence, or the sales intelligence piece, through our processing power, which is essentially deriving insights from call recordings. And when they started calling it out again and again, and they started calling out their innovation, which was being able to work at scale, is when people started recognizing, and they started kind of making the conversion calls, right? So I think there are two different things. One is from the B2C angle, the other one is from B2B angle. Both of them are, again, a go-to-market strategy from different ways and different angles.
Very good. And then another question here, which is like how to overcome the introvertness to build a personal brand for real. I recently started building personal branding, but couldn't keep up with the consistency. Look, it's a regular thing. Problem you have as an early stage founder is so many things to do, right? So you got thing here, and 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 then there's no stopping of it, and you have to do it. But here's the deal. You don't have a choice on this. Like, you are your product at the beginning. There is no product at the start. It's just
Correct.
you, right?
Correct.
So you got to be in front of people. And especially if you're selling B2B, there's another great question down here, which is actually, we've got loads of questions here. As great question here, which is like how to acquire enterprise companies. The problem is this, right? If you're trying to acquire Visa as a customer, Visa are not going to come on as a customer if they don't see like-minded companies coming on. They don't see other folks speaking about you. And it's okay if you're early. It's okay, but they have to trust you. And the only way they can trust you is you building your domain authority. And that's why when you hear me speaking about domain awareness, domain authority, domain dominance, you can't have one without the other two. They all go at the same time. And so for me as a VC, it's very, very, very important that like I have a domain authority in the area of growth, not in the area of investment. The area of investment is a fait accompli, but in the area of growth. So I'm on this call every single Monday morning with you. Now, do I have time to be on this call? Not really. I got like a bunch of other stuff to do, but I schedule it in, right? And then I get to meet amazing people. And like we get to have conversations, and then we get to build, and then we get to like do incredible things, and we build relationships on the top of that. So I just go back to like at the very beginning here, I mentioned that the word that kept coming up is systems. First of all, if you're an introvert, then you either need to start becoming more extroverted or bring in somebody who's an extrovert, right? There are three types of people for me. There's like people who are highly creative, people who are highly logistical, and people who are highly biz dev focused. And I'm a biz dev focused guy, which means I'm terrible at logistics, which means that if I didn't have Ashutosh, I'd be doomed doing all of it because he's amazing at building systems and building back end stuff. And so find your Ashutosh, right? If on the other side of it, like I'm a little bit creative, so I'm okay on the creative side of that I can do that. And so you have to just make sure that you are out there. You don't have a choice. People have got to feel FOMO about being around you. And there's a million different ways you could do it. You speak at conferences, you can speak on podcasts, you can do a book, you can do a TEDx talk, you can have seminars, you can do webinars. There's loads of stuff you can do. It's not all, oh, I have to build my social media and hope people can follow me on the social media as well. What about on the enterprise side? Any good tips on how to acquire enterprise companies?
Okay, enterprise companies, as far as I have sold to enterprise companies, there are multiple different ways of making a sale, right? One of the recently, I would say one of the tips probably out of that is identify the right decision maker, call out the value proposition in a crisp, concise manner, because you're going to get only first 5 minutes out of their mind space. The rest you can keep it to them for them to actually explore what actually you're building, etc., etc., etc. Now, and to reach that probably is like the way Brian mentioned, email marketing is probably the best way. Undoubtedly, even today, I think it's the go-to-market strategy or the lever or the tool that you got to use is email marketing. There's no doubt at all in terms of the enterprise customers. There is one other thing which I would probably give out as a tip. Whatever you're calling out as a value proposition has to be in alignment with multiple things on the other side. The most important thing of all of this is the need. Whether do they have the need at that point of time? I'll tell you, there was one customer whom I worked with, rather one of the startups that I mentored recently. They were building out a gamification platform for people to be able to pick up plastic wrappers post eating their biscuits. Okay, these kids, all of them were kids. And the FMCG company is India's, I think, the third largest company. It's called ITC. I don't know if you guys have heard about it. In ITC, there was one person managing the sustainability angle. So it had nothing to do with business development or sales. There was sustainability angle here. And this startup went and kind of told them, hey, look, you can go about and talk about sustainability if you adopt my gamification platform. That's the only line she said. There's nothing else she said. And the rest of it was explorative, where they wanted to understand how gamification is coming into sustainability and how can this game add value to my sustainability goals. And the rest of it was all story. And she said, after every event, what we're going to do is we're going to say ITC is sponsoring some amount of prizes for kids who are able to pick up all their wraps around the biscuit packets and put it in a certain place. And that's all the gamification was, right? And nothing else. ITC spends roughly about $12 million in sustainability, compliance, reporting, all these things. And just because of this gamification, they were able to do this. The share price went up like about 10-20% in a matter of about, I think, 4 quarters, right? Only because of the single campaign. and in the back end was all what she was working. And that was her first customer, first ever sale, and she was very transparent to them. She went and said, I have only the front end built out. I do not have the database. I do not have the back end built out. And the only thing is the front end. This is how the gamification aspect is going to look. And they were ready even to sponsor the project to the next level.
Amazing. And I'll throw in a couple of other little things as well. I'm going to go back to domain authority. The thing is, if you were working with an enterprise, there was an old phrase years ago, which any of the old fogies will remember here, which is like, nobody ever got fired from buying from IBM. And so that principle applies across the board. People in large organizations, they just don't want to be fired. That's all. They want to be empowered. They want to go into board meetings. They want to be in bigger positions all the time. They want to be able to get a pension at the end if they stay there, but they just don't want to be fired, right? If they leave, they want it to be of their own volition. And so if they're buying from some schmuck who just started a new project, who's got a new software that's not been tested before, that nobody else uses and nobody else has heard of, well, they deserve to be fired, right? So your job is to build up your domain authority as much as you can. You can do that with white papers. You can do that with speaking in places. You can speak with authority, but you have to. You have no choice. Again, I'm going back to personal brand. You don't have a choice. I'll tell you, with one of our companies, Matchbook, we're going to be doing a roadshow around the United States. And in that roadshow, we're going to be talking about Information Edge. They're an information company, all about one source of truth, which is the customer source of truth. And so it's all about information and access to information in a world where we're used to lies and fake news and wrong information coming to us. So we'll bring in one or two domain authorities, maybe like the biggest people in the areas of information, one or two really good speakers. Then we bring in 5 or 6 clients. Then we'll bring in 5 or 6 prospects and maybe a VC or two. Now these 20 kings and queens of industry will be in a room. Think of an old library sipping cognac or whiskey as they're talking about the greatest information threats and opportunities that are happening in that month. And then what's it all being powered by? It's all being powered by Matchbook. Build your domain authority. You have no choice.
Yeah.
And then, like, whether you do it like we did it right there, 20 people in a room, inviting people in, using LinkedIn to invite all of the local people in the local areas, and using texts and emails and all kinds of other tactics. The important thing is they're not coming into a room with somebody that they're like, who's this random Irish dude? Right? Because nobody cares.
Yeah.
I like this question as well, this point too. I think there's a huge correlation. And I think that between military and between startup, it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. It's a war. Like, any of you think this is glamorous or nice or wonderful, you just get into a nice army uniform or a startup uniform, then yeah, it feels nice for the first 15 minutes. But wait for your family to start wondering if you're the loser that they actually thought you were before. Wait for the divorce. Wait for to lose the house. Wait for the kids not to remember what your name is. Like, you're walking into a bloodbath. And so to have systems and process and procedure and outcomes and expectations very concisely measured is literally the difference between, I don't want to overly dramatize this, but it's life or death. Yeah. Too many startups fail that didn't need to fail because they treat this thing like it's a Friday afternoon fun time and not like the military exercise it is.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
I think that's perfect, Brian. One of the things that I was exchanging with my professor about 3 years ago was, in military, you require exemplary leadership to kind of motivate people towards working towards a common objective and things like that. But back out here, you require exemplary ways of communicating your value proposition and make a sale, right? That's going to be the exemplary skill that you require. And you have to be very persuasive for people because you're taking an entire organization with you as and when the team grows. And every single person is working towards a common objective, right? So it's as good as motivating people, taking them along. Like you said, it's a bloodbath. There's no doubt at all. It requires a lot of work, a lot of hard work, dedicated hours of time spent with each one of your team members, right? It's going to consume a lot of time. There's no doubt at all.
Yeah, and same as within military. Like, there are a number of different folks that you're dealing with. Like, let's say you are the chief of staff. You are the head of the army. Yeah. Then you have the folks in the air. You have the folks on the ground. You have the folks who are special forces. You have the folks that are like secret special forces. Like you have the secrets. You have all these people, which is like one is LinkedIn and one is email outreach and one is like social media and one is public speaking and public awareness. Like, and you have to manage them all at the same time. It's like an orchestra to make sure that they're all done in harmony. So I think it's a super point. Okay, right back to pricing again. At what stage should a startup implement pricing strategy overhaul, and how do you avoid customer churn in the process?
Wow. Bhargav, I think probably you need to overcome the fear of customer churn. That's very, very important. Once you get the momentum going, you need to understand that a pricing strategy overall will continue to happen as long as you're continuing to provide value, right? You can increase pricing. It's a possibility. Best example is probably YouTube. I think they commenced pricing at about $99, 99 rupees, which is roughly about, I would say, $1.50 per month, right, as their monthly fee in India when they commenced it about 2 years ago for their Prime subscription. And I think recently off late, I think they increased it 199, which is roughly about 100% raise, right? It's probably 2 times practically, right? So 2 times up, and I don't think they lost beyond 10% of their customers, right? So customer churn is something that you really need to overcome. You cannot avoid it. And that's probably the best practical way you're going to go about in terms of pricing strategy overall.
Yeah, I really like that because again, what you're doing is you're going back to customer value. Like there is no customer churn. There's just customer value. If you have tremendous value, like look at Apple, for God's sake, my laptop is like $2,000. What the hell am I doing spending $2,000 on a laptop for? It's stupid. I don't need a $2,000 laptop. I could easily get a Dell laptop for like $500-600. It would do exactly the same thing. Literally zero difference. This thing we're doing right here now, I can do it on Dell. My emails, I can do it on Dell. But would I look as handsome with a Dell computer as I do with an Apple computer? Would I feel as incredibly successful as I feel as I carry my Apple products, which are interconnected? No, I would not. And so are Apple going to churn me because they go from 2,000 to 2,100? No, Apple have already proven that if you focus on customer value, you win. I'll add maybe one extra point just because that was really your point. I've just really elaborated on it. But like the other point I will make is this: your relationship with your customers is I think there's a great phrase which is like your net worth is tied to your network or something, right? So your relationship with your customers is directly tied in with your churn in the future, directly, right? If you are not speaking to them, you don't know them, you don't engage with them really, other than ask them if they're happy or if they're not happy, then you're churning anyway, right? You might as well do it quickly by increasing the price, right? Save everybody a lot of pain. If you're really engaging with them and you know them well and you're having dinner with them maybe once every month or every 2 months because it's a special customer, and you're having sessions where you're calling them up to ask them how they are, and when it's their birthday, you're wishing them a happy birthday, and maybe their wife or husband a happy birthday. Like if you're that close with your customers, you know what to do with your pricing because you know the transformative impact. If you're not, don't. Okay, next one, because I'm rushing through the last ones in the last 5 minutes or so, which is at what stage should a startup implement a pricing strategy overhaul, and how do you avoid customer churn?
We answered that.
We actually did. Okay, wonderful. Okay, so we got more. What have we got? Oh my gosh. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, well, actually, Pikush then added in on top of his introvertness due to lack of confidence, thought, please. So his original one, if I put them both in together, was, look, if you know, introvertness, this is a real thing, by the way. Like most people are introverts, honestly. It's not most people are extroverts. And a lot of people who you think are extroverts are actually introverts. They just make up for the fact that they don't want people to realize they're introverts by being extroverts. But I think this piece, I'm just going back to it because the confidence thing actually is the cause. Like introverts, if you're an introvert and you've done something amazing and something you're really proud of, you're happy to share because you're really happy. I think it's just that confidence of being really proud of something that, and this might be a different conversation for a different time, but I think it's really important. Any quick thoughts on it?
A quick thought here is, Piyush, if you're underconfident, please look at your mirror, practice it a few times, and then you can go public. It's perfectly fine. That's the only way to overcome your confidence, right? We used to do it as young kids. When you have the fear of stage, you'll go in front of the mirror, talk to them, or you go and talk to your parents, or go and talk to your friends, and then find you come on stage. That's the exact way to do it if you lack confidence.
I love that thing. You know, my first ever TEDx talk was actually kind of terrifying for me because I had not done it before, and it's one of those things that doesn't go away. It kind of sits there forever, right? And so I knew I was going to have to go on a stage, and I was going to speak to people and everything else. And so I practiced it, and I never really practiced anything, but I really practiced that. And then as I kind of got deeper into it, I was like, okay, if I'm going to practice, to your point, I got to practice in front of things that will give me feedback. I tried a mirror. The mirror in itself didn't work for me because like, I'm just speaking to me and there's no judgment. But then I was like, okay, what else can I find that has no judgment? So then I thought of my wife, and I'm like, yeah, no. That's full of judgment. Like that's a no straight away. So at the time, my kid was 10 years old. And so I did it in front of my kid. And I literally said, I'm like, Liam, I need you to sit there, and I need you to think of ways through absolute love how I can be better, okay? Yeah. And then you're not going to tell anyone. And he would say little silly things like, Dad, I believe he was like Daddy at that stage. Oh, and he would say like, Daddy, why don't you smile when you talk? I'm like, I don't know how to. It's like really hard, actually. It's really hard because I'm like, I'm trying to remember something. Now I have to remember to smile. But then I'm like, oh, I wonder what would happen if I did smile. And then I smiled, and I realized that actually it became more in the flow. And by the time I had finished going through that process, it was unbelievably helpful to me, like unbelievably helpful. So I think your point is really good. Like, don't expect just to go out there and do it. Like, you think of the things that you want to say, make them meaningful first. Don't make them like some kind of BS that you're just repeating. They have to mean something significant to you. And then when you have them, practice them in front of people who really care about you. Or a mirror, if a mirror works for you. But like, if you do it along that, you're not going to go wrong, right? And then what will happen is you turn something which seems like it was boasting, and you turn it into something which is something that people need to know. Like, you're sharing domain expertise, because without that domain expertise, they will be lesser for it.
Yes.
Right? You're helping them.
Surprising stats is introverts do much better at domain expertise, because they don't have too much of deviations.
Good. See, there's an extreme to this, which is very American, which is like sometimes, especially with a lot of life coaches and stuff, you can like, people have got an incredible knowledge that they read in a book. I don't know, man. You seem very confident for somebody who actually has never done anything in your entire life. You're like 19 years old, and because you've had a train wreck of a relationship, you're speaking to everybody else about. Actually, you know. And by the way, I want to go back to one. Here's what I want to finish with, and then I want to leave you with the last point on this. You made a really good point earlier on, which is that, look, there is no, there is no yes. There's just like maybe not yet, right? And it can be for VCs, or it can be for customers, or it could be for anybody. And I like to equate everything to relationships. And this is like when everybody in my team is like, oh my God, what is he going to say? But like, I'm going to tie this one directly into divorce, right? So statistically, 50% of folks in the US will divorce. So if you really like someone, it may be that they're married in this particular moment, but there's a 50% chance that as long as you maintain the communication over a period of time, that person will hit divorce at some stage in the future. Now, there is actually statistically over a 10% chance that they're going to divorce twice. So even if you miss it the first time round, then you can still have a 10% chance of catching it the second time around. And if there are 10 companies that you're going after, that means statistically, if you're following them properly, you have a 100% chance of catching them 2 times. Or one of the 2 times, right? This is just math. This is all math. But what happens is we all get caught in the moment, and we're like, oh my God, Visa don't want me. Oh, that's so bad. I don't know what I'm going to do in the future. It's like, no. You're just not ready in this moment to get Visa. But Visa might be a 20-year cycle to be able to close that company. So get your big boys or your big girls boots on and get back in there again and get ready for the 20-year sales cycle that you might require to get back in with them as well. Okay, I'll leave you with the last word. And then also, I want Kishle, make sure you're sharing, please, all the contact information as well, so everybody can also get in contact with you.
Great. Thanks so much, Brian, for doing this. I think you brought out very wonderful and relevant questions with respect to GTM, with respect to building revenue systems. And I think, shared my experience through. Very important, 0 to 1, very different journey from 1 to 10. 0 to 1 is all about getting your value proposition to match with the value proposition, to match with the job to be done or the value the customer perceives. Very important. That's the only thing that get you revenue. 1 to 10 is all about scaling that aspect to a certain level, and you got to work on all the 5 profit levers to make sure that you kind of scale. It could be 3 years, 5 years, it doesn't matter. Be patient, build that system, and make sure that the system works. And that's what is going to give you a lot more peaceful nights than ever, right? And it is as good as war until you get the system right. And be sure you get the system in place. That's probably the most important aspect of this. And that's about it from my side, Brian. Please look up 10xprofitculture.com. Both these programs is what I run. One is the GTM Excellence for early stage startups, and how to scale and grow bigger is the second part of the program.
And Kishle, can you put that up on the screen, please, so everybody has the website? And make sure you're still there. And then there's other folks like Kushi and other folks that have really, his name is really, it's Jonathan Wallace. There you go. Yeah. And so the other folks like Kushi and everything, who I know you've got questions in there as well, bring them back next week. We'll go through them next week. But I mean, hopefully this has been super helpful. I know that like you'll happily jump on a call with folks if folks would just like to have a jump on for a minute and half an hour call just to get some direct feedback from them. It has been a pleasure to speak.
It's been a pleasure as well.
We're just two dudes who love talking about growth. So
yeah, totally. Thanks so much, Brian, for hosting me.
Okay, thanks, Abhiram. You're the awesome growth master. I love it. Everybody, thank you for joining. You guys are what makes the questions fantastic, that we can get really engaged. And I'll see you all same time,